Welcome back to Eyes on Intel. We don't skim. We don't soften. We don't pretend the surface is the story. We go in. We strip the layers. We track the machinery exactly as it moves. And today we are not rushing this, we are holding it. Because what we're looking at isn't a headline or a moment or a single preventable death. It is a system running exactly as engineered. Mexico's Director General of Consular Protection, Vanessa Calva Ruiz, stepped up to a microphone in Los Angeles and delivered a message the United States cannot ignore. She called the surge in ICE detention deaths alarming and unacceptable. She said these deaths reveal systemic failures, operational deficiencies, and possible negligence that violate both U.S. protocols and international human rights standards. And she demanded urgent, exhaustive clarification. Diplomatic language requires restraint, but the pattern does not, because what she described is not failure, it is design, a machine that consistently produces medical neglect, trauma, and preventable fatalities is not malfunctioning, it is functioning exactly as intended. The cruelty is the architecture. The press conference followed the death of José Guadalupe Ramos Solano, 52, found unresponsive in his bunk at Adelanto on March 25. ICE claims he received daily medication. His family says they were kept in the dark. His death is the 14th in ICE custody in the first 3 months of 2026. 4 of those deaths happened at Adelanto alone. In 2025, at least 33 people died in ICE detention, the highest in 2 decades. In 2026, 14 deaths by March. Of the 46 deaths between January 2025 and March 2026, 36 occurred within the first 3 months of detention. A joint ACLU and Physicians for Human Rights review found 95% of ICE deaths preventable with adequate care. 95% preventable. That is not a system failing. That is a system choosing. And the concealment is the other half of the pattern. Shadow releases, critically ill detainees formally released on their deathbeds so ICE doesn't have to count the death. Falsified records, medical logs rewritten, requests for care ignored, surveillance footage overwritten or destroyed. Misclassified deaths, suicides on paper, homicides in the autopsy. This is not chaos, this is workflow. And while we're on the subject of workflow, let's talk about Minnesota, because here's the part where we all pretend to be shocked. Here's the part where we act like this is new information. Here's the part where the administration says dangerous criminals, and the data says ordinary people living their lives. According to ICE's own numbers, 63% of the people arrested in Minnesota's so-called Metro Surge had no criminal convictions and no pending charges. Let me say that again in the tone it deserves. Surprise, surprise. 4,030 arrests. 2,532 of them were people with clean records. That is not a targeted operation. That is a dragnet. 97% of the arrests were street arrests, not transfers from jails, not people already in custody, people walking to work, people dropping off kids, people who happened to be outside when the machine needed to feed. And the timing? Even darker. The surge ramped up after ICE agent Jonathan Ross killed Renee Nicole Good. Instead of pulling back, they doubled down. They escalated, they accelerated the arrests from 32 a day to 74 a day. Surprise, surprise. A federal agent kills a woman and the response is to flood the state with more federal agents. A federal agent kills a second person, Alex Preddy, and the arrests stay high because the machine does not stop for accountability. The machine accelerates to outrun it. And the part that really seals it? The administration kept saying they were targeting Somalis. The far-right influencers kept saying Somalis. The talking points kept saying Somalis. The data says 112 arrests out of 4,030. Surprise, surprise. The entire operation was built on a lie amplified by YouTube conspiracy videos, a lie repeated by the White House, a lie used to justify a military-style occupation of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And when the numbers came out? When the data contradicted every talking point? When the truth showed that 2/3 of the people arrested had no criminal records, the machine shrugged because the machine already got what it wanted. The fear, the chaos, the headlines, the justification for more agents, more funding, more raids, more power. Surprise, surprise. This is not a failure. This is the design. And speaking of design, Let's talk about the digital panopticon, because Iran is now warning that U.S. tech firms could become targets as the war expands, and the headlines are acting like this is some shocking escalation. Like the world has suddenly discovered that the companies building the global surveillance leviathan might one day find themselves inside the blast radius of the very systems they helped create. It would be such a shame if the same surveillance machine that swallowed the NHS's patient records, vacuumed up American data, mapped Palestinian phones, and fed targeting coordinates into automated kill chains suddenly realized that being the world's data hoarder comes with consequences. It would be such a shame if the companies that built the invisible chains, the ones ICE agents brag about when they smirk and say you're in a nice little database now, suddenly discovered that the chains go both ways. Ask the Palestinians who watched the Lavender system decide they were targets because an algorithm said so. Ask the World Central Kitchen volunteers who were hunted down by a drone that kept firing until the convoy was shredded. Ask anyone who has ever had their life reduced to a data point in a system designed to kill first and justify later. But now the architects of the panopticon are clutching their pearls because Iran said their names out loud. Palantir, Oracle, the usual suspects. And suddenly the same companies that brag about battlefield integration and AI-driven lethality want to be seen as neutral infrastructure. Surprise, surprise. When you build the infrastructure of global surveillance, you don't get to act shocked when the world starts treating you like part of the conflict. These systems are the invisible chains the regime uses to make us submit. They are the quiet architecture of control. And now the machine is nervous, because for the first time, someone pointed at the architects instead of the victims. So, we need to talk about what just happened today. Every time this man opens his mouth, I feel like I need to schedule myself for a voluntary lobotomy just to stop the pain, because somehow every statement he makes is dumber, louder, and more self-owning than the last. We're talking about the new border czar, Tom Homan, a man who has built his entire personality around screaming about immigrants while being an immigrant himself. The irony is so thick you could pave a runway with it. But today he went beyond the usual chest thumping. He announced that even though Trump signed an executive order to pay TSA workers, meaning the so-called airport crisis is over, the ICE agents stationed at airports are going to remain there indefinitely. Let me say that again in the tone it deserves. The emergency is over. The funding is restored. The justification has evaporated. And the boots are staying. Surprise, surprise. Because this administration is not using ICE to enforce immigration law anymore, Trump is actively transforming the agency into his own private, heavily armed domestic security force. A paramilitary that answers directly to him, a force he can deploy anywhere, at any time, under any pretext. This is the most dangerous kind of conditioning. You put the agents in place under the guise of an emergency. You let the public get used to seeing them. You let the presence normalize, and then when the emergency ends, you simply never remove them. That is not law enforcement. That is occupation. And Homan said the quiet part out loud. He said the agents are staying because they provide a needed layer of security. Security from what? Security from whom? The TSA is funded. The airports are functioning. The only thing that changed is that the administration realized how much they liked the optics of federal tactical units standing around domestic transit hubs. This is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. You create a crisis, you deploy the force, you declare the crisis resolved, and you leave the force in place. And the public is supposed to shrug. The public is supposed to accept it. The public is supposed to forget that ICE agents were never meant to be stationed at airports in the first place. We cannot let them normalize this. An expanding, unaccountable domestic paramilitary force is not safety. It is not order. It is not stability. It is a threat to every single person in this country. And if you want to see how far the normalization has already gone, look at the budget. Look at the numbers. Look at the priorities. The Trump administration just pulled more than $3 billion out of permanent housing programs. That is not a typo. That is not a rounding error. That is a deliberate extraction of resources from the only federal program that actually keeps people housed long-term. Up to 170,000 people are now at risk of losing their homes. Veterans, disabled tenants, Families who finally stabilized after years on the street, people who were told they were safe, people who were told the system would not abandon them again. And the justification from HUD was that permanent housing is too expensive. They called it warehousing. They said the government should not be in the business of permanently warehousing the homeless. Let us pause on that word, warehousing. Because if you want to see real warehousing, look at Adelanto, look at Dili, look at the ICE facilities expanding across the country right now. Look at the literal warehouses where human beings are stacked, processed, and discarded. Permanent housing for veterans is warehousing. But ICE detention centers are not. That is the logic. The truth is simple. They are not opposed to warehousing people. They are opposed to warehousing people safely. They are opposed to warehousing people with rights. They are opposed to warehousing people in ways that do not generate profit for private contractors. The money is not gone. The money has been reassigned. It has been redirected into the detention machine, into the same system that produced 14 deaths in 3 months, into the same system that releases dying detainees on paper so the death does not count, into the same system that destroys video evidence and rewrites medical logs. They are evicting people from homes to fund cages. They are cutting care to expand cruelty, and they are doing it in plain sight. Let us be clear, this is not fiscal conservatism. This is not budget discipline. This is not about saving money. This is about choosing who gets to live indoors and who gets locked in a warehouse. This is about choosing which bodies are protected and which bodies are expendable. 170,000 people are about to lose their homes, and ICE is about to get another blank check. This is the architecture. This is the design. This is the machine. Eyes on intel. We see it. We track it. We name it. We will keep tearing it down to the studs. And as we keep tearing it down to the studs, remember, open hearts, open minds.